Colin Dixon stopped his car on the side of a deserted highway. The rearview mirror showed a police car with its flashing beacon on. It was about 6 p.m. on February 21, 2006, and Dixon had just finished a shift at Securitas AB, a security company where he worked as a manager. He was leaving Tonbridge, 30 miles southeast of London. That's where the unassuming brown building, hidden behind a car repair garage, is located. Little did anyone know that this building was a kind of regional warehouse where cash for the Bank of England was stored and dispersed. Tired after a day's work, the 52-year-old man felt irritation rising from him at the sudden stop. He thought he had broken the rules somewhere and now he would have to pay a fine. He rolled down his window just as a tall, athletic-looking policeman approached the car. The officer ordered Dixon out of his Nissan and informed him that he had committed several offenses. The man obeyed the request and did not protest, even when the officer handcuffed him and placed him in the back of the police car. However, the detainee noticed that the officer's appearance was too emphasized, as if someone had put makeup on him, and that the car did not look like a regular police car. Loud music blared from the radio, and as the car squealed and drove back to Tonbridge, Dixon realized he wasn't facing a fine at all. A second policeman with a prosthetic mask on his face was in the front seat. He turned to Dixon and told him, with a threatening tone in his voice, not to do anything stupid, and no one would get hurt. When the man tried to adjust the handcuffs, the false officer suddenly lost his temper and started waving his gun around, shouting that he was not to be trifled with. It later turned out that the police uniform was fake. They had bought a Kent County police badge on eBay, and a professional makeup artist had distorted the kidnapper's appearance. The car drove a few miles down the highway. Then, the hostage was transferred to a van, where he was blindfolded and taken to a remote farm. At the same time, in the nearby town of Herne Bay, a black van pulled up to Dixon's house, and two men in police uniforms exited. They called Dixon's wife, Lynn, and informed her that her husband had allegedly been in a severe accident. They had to take him to the hospital, and the policemen were ready to escort her there. The disturbed woman quickly got dressed and got into the van with her 8-year-old son, and only then realized her mistake. She started shouting and calling for help, but was quickly gagged. The van arrived at the same farm that Lynn's husband was at. But the relief and joy of the encounter were immediately replaced by terror. They were tied up and taken at gunpoint. The robbers approached Dixon and ordered him to reveal all information about the warehouse. They promised that if he obeyed, no one would get hurt, or else he would get shot. The manager had to obey, and soon the robbers drove into the Securitas warehouse. A fake policeman was driving in the sedan, pointing a gun at Dixon, followed by a white Renault truck with a bound family sitting in the back. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. A security camera captured the officer pushing Dixon to the entrance and forcing him to enter the security code. Once inside, the fake policeman attacked the guard and called in all of his accomplices, dressed in ski masks and heavily armed. Alarmed employees of the warehouse rushed to the noise. The sudden commotion led some workers to think it was another drill, but Dixon said the robbers were holding his family hostage and asked them not to interfere. He deactivated the alarm system and handed the criminals the keys to the vault. Dixon's family and 14 Securitas employees were tied up and locked in the metal cages where they usually kept the money. Meanwhile, one of the robbers drove a truck up to the loading dock. Sitting behind bars, the hostages noticed that the robbers had a clear idea of the setup of the warehouse. They easily navigated all the hallways and knew how to open particular doors. All because one of the gang members, Amir Hysenaj, a 28-year-old Albanian migrant, was a brilliant spy. A few months before the robbery, he took a job at the warehouse. Low-skilled labor was always in short supply, so after a short 10-minute interview, Assange was hired on the evening shift. He worked conscientiously and at the same time memorized the layout of the warehouse. A few weeks before the robbery, he hid a miniature camera in his belt buckle, which resulted in the whole gang becoming familiar with the layout of the premises. The robbers worked fast. Within 40 minutes, they had emptied the vault, rolling entire metal trolleys of cash into the back of the truck. There were so many used and new 10 and 20-pound notes in the vault that the white Renault truck could only hold a quarter of the money. And even that amount looked staggering. The gang managed to take 53 million pounds in cash, or over $100 million. A further 154 million pounds was left behind by the robbers. Up to this point, events had played out as if they were in a new installment of Ocean's 11. The level of training of the robbers and their discipline paid off. No one was hurt or shot. At 2 a.m., the robbers quietly drove off, leaving the hostages tied up. And, as it happens in a good film, something went wrong. At about 3 a.m., Dixon Jr. was able to slip out of the metal mesh and call the police. By then, the robbers had returned to the farm, where they divided the loot among themselves. But it was the greed that ruined the kidnappers. If they'd taken just a few million, it would have been just another robbery, however elaborate. But such a vast haul has become the headline story in the news. CCTV footage was broadcast on television and the internet, and hundreds of police officers were deployed to find the criminals. Securitas reimbursed the Bank of England £25 million and promised a further £2 million in reward for any information about the burglars. But the criminals themselves did everything in their power to get caught. They put all the discipline and calculation into planning the crime and became arrogant and frivolous after winning. Some members of the gang bragged to their friends about the robbery, and they didn't even bother to hide the cash carefully. The burglars dumped the cars they had been seen in near pubs and car parks, which meant the police quickly spotted them. Some of the cars were registered to addresses linked to the criminals, so there was no chance of them escaping. 2 days later, police arrested Michelle Hogg, the makeup artist and daughter of a police officer who allegedly changed the appearance of the gangsters. Later, they managed to find the van where the Dixons were being held. The next day, someone told officers where the second van was. There were guns, ski masks, bandanas, and £1,300,000 waiting quietly for the police. The trail led to mixed martial arts fighter Lee Murray, nicknamed Lightning, and his mate, Leah Russia. And that's when the cops got lucky. In Murray's old broken-down car, they found a phone with a random voicemail message discussing the robbery. During the search, Russia was found in possession of the plans for the warehouse, as well as £8,600,000. In just 10 days, cops caught almost the whole gang and recovered millions in stolen money, but the ringleader had already slipped away by then. Murray had been on the radar of law enforcement before that. He was constantly fighting on the streets and distributing drugs. As a teenager, he grew up in juvenile detention when he attacked a driver after a traffic incident. But Murray later found a way to get rid of his excess aggression. He took up mixed martial arts and soon became regarded as one of the best fighters in England. In 2002, an incident marked the beginning of Murray's scandalous fame. Famous fighters from the United States came to London to do some exhibition fights, after which the whole company went to the bar. Due to a misunderstanding, a massive fight broke out, and Murray knocked out UFC champion Tito Ortiz in front of numerous witnesses. In the ring, Murray's rage brought him victories. Still, he terrified people in ordinary life. Shortly before his trip to the US, he again attacked a driver and was accused of causing grievous bodily harm. His career finale was a fight against rising Brazilian star Anderson Silva. Murray lost by decision and received several $1,000s for this fight. In September 2005, in another street fight, he was stabbed several times and miraculously survived, but could not continue fighting. So Murray decided to get the money another way. When the arrests in the Securitas warehouse robbery case began, Murray had left the country. They believed him to be a Moroccan national by origin, and that country had no formal extradition agreement with Britain. Lee Murray lived a life of luxury in the capital, spending money on entertainment, jewelry, and drugs with his friends. A few months later, he bought an expensive villa next door to a royal relative and furnished it lavishly. But he had no idea that his days of freedom were numbered. Scotland Yard had already contacted Moroccan law enforcers and demanded his arrest. On June 25, 2006, a large squad of police officers blocked Murray and his friends in a shopping mall and, after a brief scuffle, arrested them. In January 2008, 5 members of the gang were found guilty of robbing Securitas and received heavy prison sentences. But Murray was never extradited. He received 25 years in a Moroccan jail, avoiding an interview with journalists. As a result, Murray was declared persona non grata by casinos in London. Murray responded with a short note announcing he'd already hit the jackpot. The perfect heist turned into a farce, but the £32 million was never recovered. Dixon's family got a new biography under the Witness Protection Program. They moved to Australia to start their lives anew and try to forget that nightmare night. They had to go to this extreme measure because the police never managed to catch one of the masterminds of the crime, who likely fled with most of the stolen money. Hit us up in the comments and let us know what you think of this story. And if you like the video, like and subscribe to our channel and click on the bell so you don't miss our new video alerts.